In what would normally be a quieter time of year here in the Summit County real estate market, we are off to the races in early 2024. But before we take a look ahead at what's in store for the rest of this year, I think it's important that we take a look at the 3 key takeaways from the fourth quarter of 2023. Hey, it's Pete Deininger with the Breck Life Group right here in Breckenridge, Colorado. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the Q4 Summit County real estate market update. And we're going to both zoom in and look at Q4 and how those 3 months compared to the fourth quarter of 2022. And we're also going to zoom out and take a look at the full calendar year to see trend lines there as compared to the full year 2023. We'll talk number of sales, we'll talk prices, we'll talk inventory, and yes, I'm going to go out on a limb and make some predictions so that you can hold me accountable in a future video. Let's get started. All right, first up, let's look at the number of sales or the total number of closed transactions. And we're going to look at this from both of the angles that I just mentioned. We'll look at Q4 and we'll look at the full calendar year. So for the fourth quarter, total number of sales down 2% by comparison to the fourth quarter of 2022. That's essentially unchanged. It was only a handful of sales fewer this year in the quarter than the previous year. But when we zoom out and take a look at the full year, all of Summit County, all property types, we were down yet again 7% year over year. And that's only significant because number of transactions have been falling year over year for a couple of years now, going back to 2020. So we started the first half of the year pretty far down in number of transactions, and it was only an uptick in the latter half of the year that really brought us to about 7% down for the year. That obviously, as I mentioned, the fourth quarter only 2% off of the prior year. Really the outlier once again, the single family detached home segment of the market, down a full 11% for total number of sales for the year. And this really can only be attributed to the fact that this is the segment of the market that is most directly impacted by the short-term rental license restrictions. If a buyer comes to us and says, we'd like to buy, we love it in Summit County, but when we're not here, we would like to make our property available for rentals, it is the condos and townhomes where you're more likely to be able to obtain a rental license. And so single-family home sales have been falling both in number and in average sales price. Next up, let's take a look at prices. Typically, when we see falling number of transactions for any time period, there can be a correlation to falling sales prices. That's because as buyer demand decreases, sellers have to do one of two things. Either they will negotiate off of full list price, or they will, after a certain number of days on the market, they will do a price reduction to incentivize buyers to come to the market and take a look at their property. For the fourth quarter of 2023, compared to the prior fourth quarter 2022, prices were up a whopping 10% for all property types. So that's the average sales price up 10% in the fourth quarter over the previous year. When we zoom out to look at the full calendar year, prices were flat, essentially a 0% change of the average sales price for all property types in Summit County. We saw, much like with number of sales, we saw prices actually trading below last year's prices in the first quarter and the second quarter. It was only as we moved into the latter part of the summer and the fourth quarter where prices were actually trading above last year's prices. It was probably reflective of the fact that as interest rates were falling, we saw a lot more buyers come to the market, and we started to see signs of competing offers. So we finished the year flat as far as average sales price, but the fourth quarter really showed us an increase in buyer demand, and perhaps that's indicative of what we'll see in 2024. I'll have my predictions for you in just a minute. Okay, our third key takeaway. Let's take another look at inventory, or the number of new homes and condos that come to market during any period. Finally, a little bit of good news. In the fourth quarter, inventory, brand new listings, new to the market, up 14% over last year. Now, we've been talking about anecdotally, as I'm speaking with sellers, we have what we call a lot of shadow inventory. We've got sellers sitting over in the shadows. They would like to list their property to either trade up to something larger or trade down to something smaller. Perhaps the way that they're using their home is different than it was years ago when they bought it. They either have more people joining them at their home or fewer people joining them at their property, and therefore they want to trade up in size or down in size, but they are not willing to trade, let's say, a 3.5% mortgage interest rate to on their current property, sell that and purchase a replacement property at something near 8%. So as interest rates have begun to fall both in the latter part of Q4 of last year and continue to stay lower the early part of this year, we have seen more sellers bring their properties to the market. Thank goodness for buyers who've been waiting for more opportunities in the marketplace. Now, when we zoom out to look at the full calendar year, once again, the early part of the year was a big influencer in the total numbers. Inventory was actually down 10% for the full year compared to 2022. So we're not out of the woods yet, but we're hopeful that the fourth quarter of this year and sellers returning to the marketplace is going to be a sign of things to come in 2024. All right, it's time for my favorite part of each of these videos, predictions, where I go out on a limb, bring my cloudy crystal ball, look through the haze, and try and see where we're headed in the coming months and entire 2024. So if you think back to 3 months ago when I did my Q3 summary, I made 2 predictions, one of which was completely wrong and one of which was completely right. And here's what I said. I said that in the Q3 summary, I said that we are likely to not see mortgage interest rates dip below 7% until the beginning of the third quarter of 2024. And that we probably wouldn't see interest rates hit 6% until at best the fourth quarter of 2024. Well, I have egg on my face. Towards the tail end December of 2023 and moving into early 2024, when the Fed, perhaps we were not predicting the Fed was going to pause their prime lending rate increases. And even though that prime lending rate is not tied directly to mortgage interest rates, we did see when the Fed paused, indicating that there was a decline in inflation, we saw mortgage interest rates begin to fall. And so far this year, we have helped several buyers secure interest rates in the mid 6s. So I totally missed the timeline on when we would return to see mortgage interest rates in the 6%. What I did predict about that is that when we see interest rates floating back down from nearly 8% to the mid 6s, that we would see a return of competitive offers. And that's what we've seen already. As I mentioned, recently we brought on 2 new listings. Each of them we were thinking that perhaps we were a little optimistic in our pricing. They were perhaps at the upper end of where we might counsel, and both properties under contract on the first day, one at full list price and it's already closed, one above list price because of competing offers. In both scenarios, there were multiple buyers looking at the property, waiting for something just like that, and so we have seen a return of competing offers. It's a great time still, as point number 3 indicated, inventory is still very low. So it is a great time to be a seller, and with rates falling, it's a more attractive time to be a buyer. All right, that wraps up my Q4 2023 3 key takeaways and some predictions about how the Summit County real estate market is going to fare in this new year 2024. If you have questions, and we know you have questions, reach out to us, give us a call, send a text, send an email. We are here to help you navigate what can be a challenging environment when you don't live here. And if you're local, then stop us on the street. Ask us about the market. Let us know what questions you have. We're here to help. I'll include below a link to the full blog article where we cover more than just these 3 key takeaways. As always, let us know what questions you have. We'll see you in the next video.